Today, I'm going to show you how to turn a kitty litter pail into a DIY fog chiller. It's simple, budget-friendly, and in about an hour, you'll have fog crawling across the ground like it came straight from a graveyard. The main component of your fog chiller is a litter pail. For me, this is a 17-pound litter pail. I think you could also get away with using a 5-gallon bucket here. About 2 feet of 2-inch PVC. As you can see, I'm reusing some from another project. One 90-degree 2-inch elbow. There are a few different styles of this. I personally like the sharp turn version. 1 or 2 2-inch PVC couplers. About 3.5 feet total of 1/2-inch PVC. You might actually be able to get away with some scraps here like I'm doing. 4 1/2-inch 90-degree elbows. 1 1/2-inch 4-way PVC connector, some type of hardware cloth or square fencing. It seems to go by several names, but you just want something that doesn't have big enough holes that your ice will fall through it. I am also going to add in this optional 2-inch inlet cover so that ice doesn't fall out while you're refilling the fog chiller. At the end, I am going to paint everything in matte black spray paint, but you can use whatever you want. Now that we talked about the supplies you'll need, let's talk about some of the tools that you're going to want. We're definitely going to be using every home haunter's favorite tool, a hot glue gun. If you like this fancy glue gun station, check out my other video on how I made this. Something to cut the PVC with. For the smaller PVC, I'm going to use a PVC cutter. You can also use a hacksaw, or I'm probably going to end up using my miter saw. Sandpaper to clean up any of the rough edges. To cut the holes in the side of the container, I am going to use my drill with some hole saws, but you can use a jigsaw or even a utility knife. But to me, the utility knife is sketchy. Some type of measuring device, ruler, tape measure, whatever. Some form of pliers. I prefer needle nose, but regular pliers are fine. Something to cut the metal fencing with. I prefer tin snips. And finally, you're going to want some type of hand protection, because once you cut that metal fencing, it is very sharp. The first thing you want to decide is where you want your inlet or your fog to come in versus where you want your outlet, where you want the fog to come out. This is one of my previous fog chillers. Fog goes in this way, comes out that way. But I also have another version where the fog basically makes a 90-degree turn. Depending on the situation you want to use your fog chiller in, you may want the 90-degree version or you may want the straight version. Oh, and if you haven't washed out your pail yet, go wash it. You don't want your lovely fog contaminated by kitty litter dust that smells like Glade. It just doesn't set the right mood. To make your life a little easier, go ahead and remove the lid. To make the inlet hole, measure the width of the container and find the center. For me, that's about 4.5 inches. Now you need to find the right height for the opening. I have a few different fog machines, but I found the starting hole to be about 1 to 1.5 inches from the bottom. Line up your tape measure with your center mark that you made earlier. Measure to where the bottom of your hole is going to be. I'm going to say the 1.5 inch mark, and then mark it. So your hole is going to start here and go up from here. Now you have two options. You can either try to perfectly measure a 2-inch circle and draw it freehand, or you can just grab the piece of PVC and set it on there and trace it. Before you cut this hole, double check your height with your fog machine, because once you cut the hole, you're committed. I mean, I guess if you skip this part and mess it up, you could always turn this into the outlet, or you could just take the 10 seconds to sit your fog machine next to it and save the headache. Your choice. Like I said earlier, you could use a jigsaw to cut this hole, or you could even cut it with a utility knife. Since I have a hole saw set, I'm going to use a hole saw because it's less hassle and makes a cleaner cut. If all's well, now it's time to clean up the hole, so that none of these little jagged edges reach out and grab you at any point. I'm going to use a deburring tool that I have for my 3D printer, and then hit it with some sandpaper. Now it's time to make the inlet tube. I like to sandwich the wall of the container between the coupler and the 90-degree elbow, just to give it a little more rigidity. So that's what I'm going to show you, but you don't have to use a coupler on the outside if you want to save a few bucks. Measure the inside of your coupler to the midpoint where you feel a little resistance to determine how much PVC fits inside. For me, it's about 1 3/8 of an inch. Grab your 2-inch elbow and your PVC. With the elbow inside, you're going to stick your PVC through. With the elbow snug against the wall, measure the amount that will fit inside your coupler and mark it. If you're not going to use the coupler, measure about 3 inches from the wall and make your mark. Remove your pipe from the elbow and let's go cut it. Once you've cut your PVC, go ahead, slide it back through the hole into your elbow, get a good snug fit, then attach your coupler. For the vertical tube, you want it to end up about 2 inches from the lid once it's closed. Me personally, I like to add a little mesh cover over the opening so that when I'm filling the top with ice in the dark, I don't have to be careful about avoiding the opening. If you're going to go this route, you need to account for the extra height this connector will add. Measure from the stopping point inside the elbow to about 2 inches from the top of the lid. For me, you can tell where the lid hits right here when it's closed, so about 2 inches down from that is about 8 inches. This is going to be the total height of the vertical piece you need, so if it's just pipe, measure it, mark it, and cut it. If you're adding the fitting on the end, add the fitting, then Measure from the top of your fitting, mark your pipe, and make your cut. Go ahead and insert your cut pipe back into the elbow. If you're going to add the cover fitting, don't add it just yet. Also, for my past builds, I've just used a friction fit, meaning the connections are snug enough that they hold themselves together. But if you feel like they are loose, hit them with the hot glue gun in a couple of places just to hold them together. Really, it's up to you, but I don't bother making more permanent connections than that because now it's easy to replace a part later if needed, and I don't care about a little internal leakage under the pressure. Congratulations are in order. You now have an inlet for your fog machine, and it's all downhill from here. The outlet starts off the same way as the inlet did. Pick where you want the fog to come out. For me, it's rare that I have enough flat space to use too many straight fog chillers, so I'm going to put mine coming out of the side. Now, I'm not going to measure and try and find the center of the side, but you can if you want. I'm going to guess it's somewhere right about in here. Height-wise, I am going to measure though. And for me, it's going to put the opening about 1.5 inches from the bottom again, just like the inlet. I'm going to use a short piece of cutoff from earlier just to do my tracing. Once you've traced your circle, cut it, clean it up, sand it just like you did for the inlet. Make sure your PVC fits nicely. I've got a little extra space, but that's fine. For your outlet, measure the depth of your coupling. Mine's about 1.5 inches, and then add about 3.25 inches to that number. Those two numbers added together was about 4.25 inches. Measure it, mark it, and go cut it. Take your coupling, put it inside, slide your cut piece of PVC in, give it a good tight twist. Now that I'm happy with everything where it is, I'm going to go around the outside and hit it with some hot glue. The best clamp a home haunter has. Once you've added your hot glue around your inlet and your outlet, it's time to move on to the shelf for the ice. For the ice shelf, I experimented with a couple of different ways of doing this initially, and a couple of different heights for the shelf. Where I settled was I felt like having about 2/3 of the container full of ice seemed like a decent blend between hang time and time to refill. To make the shelf, I'm going to build PVC supports that will hold the wire shelf itself. Measure up about 1/3 of the inside height of your container. For me, that makes my legs about 4.5 inches long, which oddly enough is what that height is. I did not plan that. This has not been cut. On your 1/2 inch PVC, make marks at 4.5 inches, 9 inches, and 13.5 inches. I already have a leg, so I'm not going to mark another one. But if you need to mark another one, it's 18 inches. Ultimately, you want to end up with 4 pieces that are 4.5 inches long. Go ahead and put an elbow on each one of your legs. For this next part, flip your pail on its end. I'm going to do it on its side so it's a little easier for you, but you need to take measurements for where this leg is going to end up versus this cross piece. So you're going to end up with 4 pieces that should be about equidistant. These 4 pieces are going to make up the supports for your wire shelf. I'll admit, this part took me a little trial and error, but what I ended up with was about 3.25 inches being the right length for each of the 4 legs coming off. Going back to your PVC, make marks at 3.25, 6.5, 9.75, and 13. Black on black probably wasn't the best choice, but again, it's scraps. If the measurements for your container don't match this, that's fine. Mark your PVC based on the measurements you need and then cut it. Once you've cut those, you should end up with 4 pieces. Push each one of your horizontal supports into your 4-way, then insert each one into one of your legs. You should end up with something looking like one of those things that used to come in pizza boxes years ago that kept the box from sagging into the middle of the pizza. This will essentially serve the same purpose for our metal fencing. Flip your pail back over and place your support structure inside, opposite of your inlet. Now for the metal fencing. Please wear gloves while they're dealing with this stuff. And I don't mean those thin gardening gloves. I mean some heavy-duty gloves, because this stuff is very unforgiving once you cut it. You have been warned. Further bloodshed is on you. Take your wire fencing and set it across the top of your pail. Using a marker, trace along the top edge of the pail onto your wire. I know you're not going to see it on camera, but there is a faint black line around where I traced the lid. When it comes to cutting this stuff, I prefer to use 10 steps. You can use wire cutters too. Since my pail narrows as it goes down from top to bottom, I'm going to cut inside the marks. And then using pliers, I'm going to fold those cut parts under, reducing the likelihood of me stabbing myself later with one of those cut edges. Here's a little tip I just realized while I was doing this. Instead of trying to bend each individual one, what I actually just started doing was take my pliers, put it where I want it bent, and press down. That gives me somewhere for the wire to bend automatically. Now I can just come back, again, with my gloved fingers, just pull up that bent edge and fold it over. And with that, all your really sharp pieces should be folded under, except for that one. We also need to measure and cut a hole for our inlet. Do the same thing, trace around the outside edge, just like you did the top of the pail, cut it and fold it. Now, if you did pretty well at cutting this out, it actually turns out this is the perfect size to use on your inlet cover. Slide your mesh down over the pipe, kind of nestle it in place It's okay if it's a little snug. Just make sure it goes all the way down, and that completes your ice shelf. Now if you want, you can add on that extra little outlet cover or inlet cover. There you go. That's the inside of your fog chiller. Now we have one final thing we need to do. With all that melting ice inside, we need to give the water somewhere to go, so we're going to make a drain hole. Grab yourself a decent sized drill bit. You could do an 1/8 of an inch or even 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to go with 1/4 of an inch. Since water and electronics don't mix, make sure your drain hole is away from your fog machine, so you don't want it near your inlet. The bottom of my pail has these ridges, with the largest area being here in the middle, so that's where I'm going to put my drain hole, is in the middle section here. You want to put this as close to the bottom as you can. You might be able to see on the outside where the bottom of the pail is fused to the side. Just drill right above that. If you want to take this a step further, you could always attach a small tube to the hole and run the draining water somewhere else. For me, these just sit in the yard. I just let the ground soak it up. Congratulations. At this point, you now have a fully functional fog chiller. So you can stop there, but why would you? Do you really want people wandering through your haunt seeing a random kitty litter pail? I didn't think so. Grab that spray paint, grab your chiller, and let's move the party outside. You're welcome to decorate your chiller however you want, or use whatever color you want. Me? I like to use a matte black spray paint, which will make it harder to see at night. During the day, well, it is what it is. It's a black box. I don't know what to tell you about that. Make sure you spray the inlets. You don't want to see bright white sticking out in the middle of the night. All right, the paint is dry. Time to put it to the test. Set up your fog machine and let it start warming up. Place the inlet a few inches away from the fog machine nozzle. Fill the chiller with ice and close the lid. You've got your fog chiller in place and your fog machine is warmed up, so let it rip. Look at that rolling fog spilling out and hugging the ground. Table. That's exactly the kind of creepy atmosphere I want in my yard every Halloween. These chillers are simple to make, cheap to build, and they deliver every single time. Just keep some extra ice handy and you'll have fog that transforms your haunt all night long. If you try this out, let me know in the comments how it works for your setup. Thanks for watching and happy haunting. Look, PVC guts.